Hello, I'm going to show you how to do a crocheted sachet scarf, and I'm using Red Heart Boutique sachet thread. The thread comes in a ball, and you can do two things. You can pull the thread apart, unroll it and pull it apart. But what I did, and I found easiest for me, is I pulled the end out of one side and the other end, and I tied those ends together into a knot. And then I like to do this. A friend showed me that using 2 layers, it makes it really fluffier. And you can either unroll the whole roll of thread and unravel it and pull it apart, but it goes back together, so you're constantly pulling it apart. And so what I like to do also, some people go through every loop, but I really prefer going through every other loop, and I also prefer going through the second loop instead of the first. The first loop is a little thin, so this really makes it a little bit stronger. So you skip a loop and then you go into the next loop, making sure that you've got your threads together. You skip a loop and you go into the next loop, and you do 5, skipping every other loop. And it's just as easy to kind of unravel your thread as you go. So I skipped a loop and get my loops together here, and I'm going into the next loop, and this is 4. I missed a loop. Okay, and then and you can make a mistake, it really doesn't matter. I still didn't get it right, so let me go back, skip a loop. You want to go into the second loop here, so I've skipped a loop and I'm going into the second loop. Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Skip a loop. And go into the second loop. Okay, now I have 5, so it's easier for me to just pull the loops over the needle than trying to drag it through, and just tighten it. And then you would skip a loop and go into the next loop. And like I say, you unravel, and working on a flat surface like this, you can kind of spread your thread out and crochet as you go. So you want to make sure you have both layers. So I skipped a loop, went into the other loop, skip a loop and go into the next one. That's 4. And like I say, some people go into every loop, but I prefer going into every other loop. Okay, and now I'm at the end, and so I'm pulling the loops over my hook, and then I hold it and tighten it. Pull the thread and tighten it. And every now and then you want to unravel your thread a little bit and try to get it back spread apart so that you can see it. That's your most time-consuming thing, is just keeping your thread. But if you have a flat surface like this to work on, you can kind of see your loops a little bit better, and know where to go into for each of your loops. And you do this all the way across, and by doing the double layer like this, it really makes it fluffy. Some people go and do 4 or 5, and then they turn it around and do 4 or 5, and then they come back and do 4 more, and then they turn it, and so they're kind of doing double layers. But this one, you're doing a double layer all at one time because you're using both ends of the yarn and making it a double layer. So that's how I do my crochet, and my scarves have come out really pretty, and they're very fluffy. And when you get to the other end, you can cut it and tie it off the same way. It may be a little twisted, but that's okay. And this will hang over, so you will never see that knot because it will hang over the knot and nobody will ever see that. So that's okay to do, but it really turns out pretty, and that's how I make my sachet scarves. Good luck in your crocheting.